It's time for another Fantasy Analyst Rankings Rumble. I'm going to be talking with B-Dub from Fantasy Basketball International, and we're just going to be destroying each other. Maybe, sort of, hopefully. Let's see how it goes. Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily fantasy basketball podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast, brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free and we are available on all platforms. All right. Yesterday, I talked to Mitch Casey, we debated each other's rankings, and now me and B-Dub from Fantasy Basketball International are going to do the same thing with a bunch of players. Probably should tell you who those players are, that I don't need to keep it a secret. We're going to be talking Desmond Bane, Chet Holmgren, Paul Reed, and Christian James McCollum. Might as well go get B-Dub. All right, here he is. He's back on the show. It's been about a year, I'd say, since B-Dub has been on here. Welcome back to the show, B-Dub.
How you doing, mate?
I am good, and it is good to have you back on the show. We're going to battle with some rankings here. We're going to do a little bit different with you, though, because, of course, you are one of the co-founders of FBI Fantasy Basketball International, and the FBI LOFB World Cup kicked off today with the drafts. So this show's actually coming out tomorrow, but yeah, whatever. The drafts are started, and you're one of the co-creators over there, but you've got a bunch of ADP data from all of the draft-only drafts and some of the other drafts that you've been doing over there. So you're going to be using some of that as your basis of why I am completely wrong in my positioning on players. So tell us how you got that data to begin with.
All right, so over at FBI, we start running draft-only leagues basically as soon as the playoffs are finished. So but the NBA basketball just never stops. I know your views on drafting that early, but me and probably hundreds of other diehards, we just like to keep it going. So we roll from the standard leagues into the playoff leagues, and then we immediately kick off the draft onlys. They tend to get more popular as the off season progresses, but do mostly head-to-head draft onlys, few rotos chucked in there, a couple of points ones. But effectively, we've done 75 draft onlys over the course of the last 3 months or so. And the data that we're looking at today is the aggregation of where people have been going over that entire period of time.
Yeah, you're right. I don't like drafting super early. Kingy's always like, come to a mock draft. I go, Kingy, it's the 1st of May, mate. Like, let's just calm down. I'm not going to do that now. I like to just absorb stuff and slow it down, and then we crack in once we get to August. But there is a lot of data there, and you'll see a lot of changes and stuff happening over those months and weeks, and it's going to bring us to talk about 4 different players on this show in terms of where you think that I'm wrong in terms of, or where your drafters think that I'm wrong in terms of where I'm positioning players, and where I think that they're full of shit as well in terms of where they're drafting their players. And we're going to start with you having a crack at one of mine, and we're going to start with the big fella in Memphis, Desmond Bane.
All right.
There we go. Des Bane is up. He does have currently an ADP of 22 over on Yahoo. Where does he sit with you guys, and why am I crazy to not have him as high as you do?
All right, mate. You're going to have to give me just one tick while I pull it up, but I do believe that we've got him. In fact, I can remember off the top of my head, he's actually going in our ADP data at around 35, which I think is way too low. But I believe that with your data, it's actually, your rankings, it's somewhere similar to that in the 30s. Is that right?
Yeah, I've got him as outside the second round. I've got him in the middle of the third round, so around that 30 to 33 sort of an area. And I did a mock draft just with myself the other day, like as I do it on Basketball Monster all the time. And every time I came to Desmond Bane, the pick, I went, I think I'll get someone else. I think I'll get someone else. And I just don't, like, I know he's good, but it just doesn't get me what I sort of need, I don't think. So yeah, I don't have him anywhere near that second round or late second round range.
Yeah, well, look, I'm in agreement on a lot of your rankings, and obviously me and the whole community heavily influenced by you and what you and Basketball Monster put out there. But Yeah, Desmond Bane, 31. I think we've got him. You've got him on the ranks here. Me personally, I do think that is too low. So I would actually have Desmo in about that sort of 24 to 26 range. I wouldn't even be unhappy if you're taking him the last couple of picks of the second round. And the reason being that we've got him, or that I personally got him that high, is obviously Jar's out for the first 25 games. That's the obvious one. So Desmond's going to get a lot of ball handling responsibility. Tyus was shipped off to Washington. So they don't necessarily have a lot of quality ball handlers there. Desmond can handle the ball, and I think that he can handle it better than and more frequently than he's actually had the opportunity to show in the past. But even more than that, I think it's I think he's just poised for a really big season. Even if Jar was there, I still think that he's about to elevate and take another step up. He is built like a brick shit house, Desmond Bane. Yeah. He's stocky, he's tall, he's got handles, but the one thing that he can really do really well is shoot. So I think you're going to get amazing percentages with Desmond Bane. I think you're going to get a lot of more assists than usual to start off the season when he's got more more ball handling responsibility. He's going to get you a lot of threes. And I think basically just across the board, his stats are going to be really good. So I think he's actually going to definitely outperform that sort of late second round ranking, particularly to begin the season. But I think there's a very high chance that he actually flows that through into the rest of the season. And the last thing I'll sort of say on Desmond is, it's really sort of problematic to draft players on the basis that you might trade them. But in this particular case, I think there's a sort of I think that is a factor, because if he comes out the season to start the season absolutely firing, and he could be returning early second round, maybe even late first round value to kick it off, you really do have an opportunity potentially to make a trade for another sort of top 20 guy that maybe didn't start the season so well. Maybe LaMelo doesn't come out the gates firing, Desmond does. It does sort of open up an opportunity for a trade, which, again, not something that we normally draft for, but in this case, I think you got to take it into account.
Yeah, I understand all that, right? I do get that. I do think that he is going to see a usage bump. At the beginning of the season, he had 27 usage with Morant off the court last season and 24.5 when they shared the court. So that's a sizable enough difference. You're right, more ball handling. But also, in the majority of leagues that we're looking at, B-Dub, is that we're talking head-to-head and we're talking playoffs, and that's not going to be the case in the playoffs, and he's probably going to settle back down. And he's very good. I really like Desmond Bane. He's a very good shooter. He's going to score. He might average 25, 5, and 5. That's a super valuable player. It's also Zach LaVine. Like, that's what Zach LaVine does, right? I don't see a gigantic difference between those two in terms of like 25, 5, and 5. LaVine's actually pretty good in terms of field goal percentages, and elite free throw guy gets the line more than Bane as well. They can do those things pretty similarly. But at the moment, I believe LaVine's going like 30 spots below where Bane is. And your trade point is true in a theoretical vacuum. But if you're in a league where people know what's going on, every single person is going to be like, nah, he's going to drop off. Like, that's good. Look, there are going to be players that people hate. LaMelo's one of them. It's a good example. Trae Young's another one where people, if he's struggling, they'll have real issues with getting him in. You might actually be able to swing those sort of deals. But in a lot of the case, everyone's going to be like, I'm pretty sure I'm not wanting Bane here because the jar impact is going to be at least something, and I don't know what it is. So I would imagine, look, if you think yourself, like, you could draft Bane and trade him away, but if someone came to you on the 1st of December, go, hey, you want Des Bane now? Look, he's rolling. He's a top 15 player. You go, I don't think so, mate. Like, Morant's coming back. Let's see what happens from here.
Well, as Dr. A would say, I think the hype train could sort of be out of control this season with Desmo. I think he's primed to have potentially an all-star season. And if he's sort of scoring 30 points a game and those assists are up and he's looking really good, he's just one of those guys that people are really hot on. And I think they could overlook that regression to the mean factor. And to be frank with you, Jar could come back out of shape.
Oh, man. Easy.
He could play with some more guns over the next few months, and he might not come back. So who knows?
That is all true.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of upside factors sort of just sitting behind the curtain there for Desmond, and I'm anticipating a big season from him.
I think one of the things I think with that is that you're right about there's hype train, but feel like Desmond Bane's hype train is purely and squarely pushed into the fantasy basketball and analytic nerd community, who would also be hyper dissecting the fact that Morant would be coming back. It wouldn't be like Desmond Bane's not going to be out there like leading SportsCenter highlights every night the way that a Trae Young or LaMelo Ball or a Bol, for example. Those guys get that ridiculous hype through those mainstream media from House of Highlights and all that sort of stuff and Hoop Central and all that sort of stuff on Twitter. Bane doesn't get that. Like, we hype him up because we know he's really good, but we're also the people who be like, I don't know about this because the Morant's coming back. So there is going to be that thing, but I think that the people who hype him up might be the people who are reticent to buy into that hype sustaining. But we'll see. I just, again, what he provides, I think, is not that dissimilar from what Zach LaVine does, and I've got them pretty close in my numbers. And I worry a little bit about that Morant issue that might be pushing him a little bit too high. But we've got others to talk about. We're going to get into those in a second. But before I do that, I think you guys know what I'm going to do. I'm going to tell you that today's episode is brought to you by the Game Time app. Killer last-minute deals, all-in prices. They give you views from your seats as well. What more could you want? Flash deals, zone deals, deals. It's all about the Game Time app, and because we don't want tickets to events to be a difficult process. You don't want it to be something that's tough for you, but you also want it to be something that saves you money. And one thing I really like about Game Time is the zone deals. You go in and say, I want to sit in this section, and Game Time goes, don't worry about it, I'll get you the seat. You don't pick the seat, but I'll get you the seat in this section, and you get an average of 18% savings on those. Just say, sit me here somewhere, don't worry about it, just get me somewhere there, and they'll do it, and you save a bit of money doing that as well. You can take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. The terms, they do apply, of course. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA. That's $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. We are going to go into another one of these now, B-Dub, and you are going to tell me why I am wrong on Paul Reed.
Righto.
All right, Paul Reed, what's going on? Where am I off on him? Because people know that I've been pretty big on him this off-season, and you're going to tell me that I am dumb and wrong, and I also smell. So go.
Well, I think you're pretty high on him. I think a lot of other people are really high on him too. I think perhaps just a little bit too high. So I believe in your rankings here, you got him at 110.
Yep, that's about right.
Yep. So in a 12-team league, that's a 10th round guy.
Mm-hmm.
So I think according to our ADP, Paul Reed really is coming in around that area. And in fact, over the last few of those draft onlys, I saw him getting taken in the 8th and the 9th round.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's another debate in itself.
Yeah. So I think it's sort of like one of those situations where the stars seem to be aligning for him. Trez has gone down. Nick Nurse has come in, talking him up, saying he looks at him like sort of like a Siakam. So everyone's sort of standing in a circle and getting ready to do something with Paul Reed in the middle there. Old Paulie probably is going to have the best season of his career, statistically wise, but there needs to be a few things that go right for him in order for that to happen. So those type of things could include Nick Nurse sort of following through on his sort of comments that he made in a recent interview that about how he sees Paul Reed. Embiid being injured, although recent seasons he's been a lot less injured than he has been before. The assumption that no one else comes back in on a James Harden trade. The assumption that there are other sort of more crappy centers like a Deadman or I think it's a what's his name?
Mo Bamba. No, Deadman's gone. It's Mo Bamba's the guy that don't.
Mo, yeah, that's right. Yeah, that Mo doesn't get a bit more of a run. So it's again one of those things where things have to go right for him to achieve that value. So where I do agree that there's actually further upside from there. Let's say that he does push into like the mid-20s in his minutes. It's going to smash through that ADP value. So it's a reasonable punt, but it's not something that I would sort of be chalking up as a sure thing. So at 110, I think it's just a little bit too rich for my blood. I tend to go for those upside flyers. Maybe I'm a bit too rigid about it, but it's sort of the last 4 rounds that I'm really looking to do that. And as I get further into those last 4 rounds 11, 12, 13, and 14, the upside flyer picks get sort of more and more ambitious. But, when I'm picking my 10th guy, it's effectively a starter in most fantasy leagues. I tend to go with a sort of safer bet that fits in with my build. So maybe if Paul Reed is the absolute perfect guy for what I'm building, I might consider him right at the end of the 10th round there. But yeah, middle of the 10th at 110 is probably a bit rich for me.
I actually agree with nearly everything that you said there, because I will continually preach this. Paul Reed did come out at around that 110 mark in my numbers, but I will consistently preach, and I'm going to tell all you guys at FBI drafting as well, please don't take him in round 8. What are you doing? There is no reason to be taking him there. Please don't do it. And I wouldn't actually, I've got him at 110, but there's so much risk built into this. He's at 110, but it's a risk of it happening. Like there is downside in picking him there. And like you, I in round 11, sure. Like I go straight for it. No problem. Pick, let's say 12-team league, round 11, pick 121. Even if it's 120, the final pick around 10, do it. Take him, whatever. I got no problem with doing that, because if he does play 26 and 9, and PJ Tucker moves out in a James Harden trade and Reed's the starter and everything blows, he's going to blow through it, no problem. And if it doesn't work out with your 11th pick, it doesn't matter. Like, it's totally okay. That's why, like, he's not a guy that you absolutely have to have. There's no such thing, I've got to have this sleeper, because you're taking him around 8, you're killing it. Like, there's no point in doing any of that. So I'd be pretty hesitant even to take him at that 110 spot. I don't think I would do it. I've got him around that area, but there's just so much. There's safety players and upside and downside guys who might come out the same number, but it's not always the same thing. I got no problem taking him round 11, but I think part of the argument here is just like, guys, calm down on it. Like, we don't need to go that high. The chances of it working out versus a return on value proposition when you start taking him at 90 or 85, it just shrinks. It's such a fine needle to thread that so much stuff needs to go right for you, plus opportunity cost of getting somebody else at that spot, that I mean, actually in full agreement with you on that. That's dumb, and maybe me having him at 110 is dumb as well. But I probably wouldn't take him there, honestly. Like, most of the time, if it got there and there was someone else I felt a bit better at, I'd slide and hope I could get him a little bit later.
I think the utility in having like a Paul Reed at 110 on your personal draft board is that when you do get to like pick 120 and you're looking back at your personal ranks. I don't know about everybody else, but I do my own custom ranks. I load them into Basketball Monster. When I'm doing the draft tracker, I can see where I've got the players ranked. I can see where Josh has got them ranked. I can see where Matt's got them ranked. The benefit of having sort of those high upside players a bit further up your personal ranks is actually when you get to a pick 120, he's standing out like dog's balls. And you can see him there in the draft tracker, particularly if you're doing like 30-second picks or 45-second picks, which a lot of us do. It's just sort of good to have those guys like in your face. So like for that reason, Paul Reed, Shaden Sharp, some other guys like maybe like an Asor Thompson, who I've got in around that same range. I do push them up a little bit, but I'm not taking them with the 10th pick. That's more from 11 and on. Yeah,
no, look, I'm actually in agreement with that, but it is, I think he's a worthwhile discussion, even though I've said it 30 times. Like, don't go higher. Don't go to 9. Don't go to 8. Don't get in. And what's going to happen is he's probably going to start one of these preseason games, and people are going to start drafting him at 70, and it's going to blow up. And then people are going to be, Josh, you told us you have to draft Paul Reed. And again, for the absolute record, no, don't. You don't have to draft Paul Reed. You get him as a really interesting last round pick with potential paths for upside. And if they don't work out, they don't work out. But when you start going to 70 and 80 and 90, like, yeah, you're going to lose out a lot. But B-Dub, that takes those two there that you wanted to challenge me on. And I've got a couple that I want to challenge you on. We're going to get to that in 1 sec. As we're just going to put the little graphics up on the screen. But this was an interesting one to me, is we're going to talk about a guy who is technically a rookie, but it is his second season in the NBA. Of course it is Chet Holmgren. All right, so with Chet, right? Initially, I had him projected a bit higher than where I've got him at the moment. His block numbers they are basically equivalent to what Jaren Jackson's were at Michigan State, but I had him, I think, probably a little bit too high coming in. Now, I think he's an unbelievable rim protector. I think his instincts and covering ground defensively, he's going to shock people. I had him number 1 overall in that draft class before that draft, and I haven't seen him play, so I'm not necessarily going to change my mind on that. I think that it's special in terms of he's not the rim protector that Victor Wembanyama is, but in terms of instincts and knowing where to be, he's probably better than him in that respect. But I worry a little bit with him about that necessarily translating straight away. The Thunder have been very steadfast, B-Dub, in what they do in terms of minutes and in terms of plans and long-term thinking. Even last season when they were pushing for the play-in, there were times where like, I'm not sure we're going to push this guy extra. We're still going to run our long rotation and we're still going to just stick with the plan. And I think that part of their plan is we don't know what we have with Chet, and we need to see how it plays out. So we need to actually still do the process of seeing how he works with everybody, with some mixing and matching and maybe some limited minutes and trying him in different roles. So we actually know how he works with Jalen Williams and with Shea and with Giddey, and is this actually the group that's going to work together? So I think there's going to be some ups and downs. As good as I think he is, he's going to be pretty low usage. There might be some efficiency problems at times for him as well, and he's going to flash some things. I just think that it is always hard for me to look at a rookie where you're taking these guys top 50, and he's technically a rookie, but he technically isn't. I just think that block overvaluation plus some of those Thunder issues, it just pushes me down a little bit, and I just don't want to go that high into like the 40s to take someone where there's a level of uncertainty there, I think.
Yeah, so I think we got him around 42 there, whereas you have him at 70. So I definitely think around 42 is decent value. I actually see a lot of drafts where he's actually goes higher than that, around 36, 37.
Yeah, okay. That's
the Wemby Chet combo seems to be a popular one for some reason. I personally wouldn't take both of those guys, one of them sure. But yeah, definitely at 70, I think that is too low. And the reason being that, look at a couple of the names that you've got above him here. The one that really stands out is Rudy Gobert.
Okay.
So I think that they have some sort of some similarities, but a massive age difference. One's on the incline, one's on the decline. I think that they would both fit on different teams where Rudy's sort of not very good at free throw percentage. Chet is actually projected to have a decent free throw percentage. It's not the best, but it's not going to absolutely kill your team. And as we all know, bigs with good to decent free throw percentage are reasonably hard to come by. So I think that pushes him up quite a bit. The fact that he can actually shoot. But just going back to your point around the Thunder and how they how they stick to their plan and their rotations, I think what I'm sort of expecting from Chet is sort of similar to what we saw from the Bronco Jalen Williams last year, where he starts off not with a outsized role, but as the season progresses, he grows into it. So I think I heard it from you that sort of it was in 2023 that he's sort of the league steals leader, but that didn't happen right off the bat. He won that role on the OKC team, and Mark Daigneault was sort of probably, as you've said, and I totally agree, as do others, is one of the best coaches in the league. He's able to recognize, what the Bronco was doing, and sort of give him more minutes incrementally as the season went on, and allow him to sort of flourish and thrive. So I think we can sort of expect that same effect with Chet, where it's going to be the same thing. He's not necessarily going to start off playing absolutely massive minutes, and he might not for the whole season. But I definitely think we can factor in some improvement as the season progresses. You pointed out on your show the other day that in college he had a similar block rate to JJJ.
Yep.
Now JJJ didn't come into the league and replicate that block rate straight off the bat, and Chet's not going to match him this season. But I think we can both agree that, if he finished the season averaging 3 blocks a game, 10 boards, 20 points, that's totally feasible. And I think that's going to put him, with decent percentages right in that zone where people are taking him. I think he's also got upside from there.
What makes you think he's got decent percentages? Because he shot under 72% from the line in college. So he could be a 70. Like, he's probably going to be better than Gobert, and he's going to be better than Kessler. But he's also, I would guess, probably going to have larger offensive roles than those guys, meaning maybe not more free throw attempts than Gobert, but he's going to get to the line a bit. And yeah, he shot well from three. That's all true. But 72 from the line on okay attempts it's not super strong. It's not terrible. And part of it with Chet is that initially I had him in that 4th round range. I went, maybe he finishes higher than Victor. That's fine. But to me, unless you are a generational guy, which Wembanyama is, it's just really hard for me to get behind taking a rookie inside the top 50. Like, we were like, hey, let's look at Jabari Smith in the 80s last year, or Paolo was going in the 75, 80 range, and it just didn't work. Now, they're not elite prospects, but Chet was in that same sort of level as those guys. I just think drafting a rookie, expecting everything to happen initially, and while I agree, I think he is going to get better as the season goes on, I've just got some concerns about the value of taking a guy like that. As you said, some people going into round 3, like I'm not doing that. Like, that's just too high. And maybe I am too low at 70, but look, the difference between 50 and 70 is actually not that big. Like, and if you wanted to go for him at 56 or 57 and ahead of Gobert, absolutely no problem with that whatsoever. But it's more just pushing him back a little bit from some of that early hype where he's going early 4th or mid 4th round. I just can't do it. I can't get behind him in that spot, even though I might be one of the biggest Chet Holmgren guys out there in terms of overall like prospect value. I said I've consistently had him number 1 in that draft. I'm just not ready to fully lean in with him on that this season.
Yeah, well, I think a bit of an overcorrection, which, fair enough. But I think when it's all said and done, he's going to go earlier than that. So
100% he is.
Yeah, he isn't getting out of the 4th round. Let's put it that way. So if he's fitting your build, you want him.
I think if he goes into the 50s, I'd happily take him, right? Even if I've got him at 65 or 70 or whatever it is, and that'll adjust as things move through the preseason as well. If he goes into round 5, I got no problem with getting him there or anything like that. It's more just like you get that, because as I would say all the time, B-Dub, is that like you get an ADP, it sits at whatever 44, but half the people are going ahead of that, and half the people are going below that. So it's more just to say, wait, let's calm down on that sort of thing. And if you want to go towards the end of round 4, the start of round 5, much better to me than the end of round 3 in that sort of an area. And as we push further down the board, the differences between players get squished in, the range becomes bigger overall in terms of groups of players in that same zone. And that's more what I'd be comfortable with Chet. And then the last one's one that
just to wait one more point on Chet. One more point. You mentioned about his free throw percentage being not that great. What I was really meaning there, and I should have articulated it better, was compared to the other centers that you're going to be taking sort of around that zone or later. If you don't get a Chet and you have to wait, you pick up a Walker Kessler, a Mark Williams, a Sengun, a Gafford, even a Wendell Carter is, 71%. Your other options are incrementally worse at their free throw percentage. So that's the last thing I'll say on Chet.
I think Mark Williams has a chance actually be better than Chet for free throws. I don't think he's that bad. Isn't he like a 72 guy?
Got him at 69 here.
Okay.
Projections. But, there's not that much of a difference. And it's not like they're taking, so many free throws in a game. You can recover from it with smart picks later on.
100% true. And let's talk about, talk about smart picks. I'm not sure taking this guy at this spot's a smart pick. It is CJ McCollum in New Orleans. Now, there's a crazy stat. I don't know the exact number, but it's like him and Zion and Brandon Ingram have played 12 games together, I believe, over the court. I think it's like 170 minutes together on the court, which is ridiculous, right? So we don't really know how it's all going to play out, but I feel very confident in saying that when they do play together, that CJ is going to be very much down the pecking order in terms of how often he has the ball, how often he's shooting it, how often he's generating assists. Like the lead ball handler is Zion, and the second guy is probably Brandon Ingram. We saw Brandon Ingram doesn't work as a spot-up guy. We just saw it at the World Cup, and that's not how the Pelicans are going to run things. Now, you can't trust the value of or the health of Zion and Ingram. That's true. But CJ is a guy whose free throw shooting has dropped off the last couple of years. There's no guarantee he's a sub all-star level player. There's no guarantee his overall shooting sticks. And I just worry that he's in a situation where you hear it all the time, B-Dub, that the Pelicans are hey, should they get in on maybe getting Drew Holiday? They want an upgrade at that position. Not that they're necessarily going to get it, but they want an upgrade at that position. And CJ needs both of those guys, I think, to go out for him to return around that 80 sort of mark value. Now, how are the guys at FBI valuing him? I know they're valuing him way higher than what I am. I'm not even sure that he's a top 100 player.
Yeah, so you've got him about 107, and at FBI, his ADP has sort of pushed back a bit, but it's still in the 80s there, which is considerably higher than you. And this is probably the biggest differential between your projections and the FBI ADPs. So with CJ, I think people are expecting a bit more of the same from the Pelicans, as potentially erroneous as that is, in that we haven't really seen a full season of Zion healthy. We haven't really seen a full season of Ingram healthy for quite a while, to be honest with you. And your point that they've only played like 180 minutes together. And fun fact there, I think that they had some ridiculous offensive rating when they were
it's like 100, it's 130. Yeah, it's something crazy.
Yeah, like number one in the NBA when those guys are playing together. And for sure, if they've got their starting five going, they are going, like CJ will be minimized versus those other two guys. But you see what's already happening in New Orleans, maybe the unluckiest franchise in the league. You know, Jose's gone down, Trey Murphy's out to start the season. They're already sort of in, injury purgatory to a certain extent. So CJ's already picking up extra minutes. And this is actually not me saying that I'm going to take him in the 80s. I have taken him in a couple of drafts, but it has been, a past pick 100. But some people are like taking him in the 60s. So I think what they're counting on, like in their defense, it's like, all right, well, Zion is not going to play the whole season. Ingram's not going to play the whole season. CJ's going to be forced into a bigger role, and we've seen him produce in the past. So in addition to that, we quite often we talk about like reverting to the mean. So you see someone like, I don't know, Larry Markkinen, he has a breakout season last year, and then we all expect that he's going to sort of come back a little bit, back to sort of where he was before, still higher, but not as high as he was last season potentially. Sort of that reversion to the mean. I think people actually see that on the other side of the curve as well, where players had a down season or two, but they still have this sort of like memory of when they were a much better player, and they're expecting them to be able to sort of re-elevate up and sort of match back to a spot that's sort of more similar to where they've been in the past. So also in his defense, I think, he's not going to, but I think there's a fairly reasonable chance that he averages more than 20 points a game, get you 3 threes a game. He might be able to push it up to 6 assists, particularly if he's forced to have the ball in his hands more with injury and so on. And his free throws have been pretty trash over the last year or two. That's something that could come back up because we've seen him do it in the past before. So, I think some people are expecting that he's not going to be as good as he's been once, but he's not going to be as bad as he has been in the last season or two. So sort of contradictory to that narrative that he's on the decline and he's on the way up.
I think they're wrong, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. Look, so much of that does depend. Look, I agree. Look, if Zion does miss 50 games, then he's going to be fine. I looked it up. They played 176 minutes together, those three. They had a net rating of 14 and an offensive rating of 122, which is obviously fantastic, but it is in a really low... I should have looked at what CJ's usage was. Let me go and have a look and see if I can see what that is in that time. He had a usage of, under 20. 19.6 of his usage, which is really and a true shooting of 49%. That I don't expect to hold. But that is interesting to me, just that how good they were with CJ doing so little, I guess, in that time. My issue is that, again, with the free throws, I've seen so many of these guys who just fall off a cliff. Russell Westbrook, Andrew Wiggins, and it doesn't come back. It just doesn't. Like I can't think of a guy that took like a 7-8 percentage point free throw percentage drop and then recovered it 2-3 years later. I'm sure there's one, right? But the two major glaring ones are Westbrook and Wiggins, who were 80-plus guys and then became 60s and low 70s guys. And CJ's on that same path. I've got no idea why it's happened, but I'm not going to put faith that that's going to necessarily return. Did he have an
off-season surgery?
On his thumb, yeah.
Yeah, well, that is an area that's pretty integral to free throws. So
but he didn't have the thumb problem the year before either, though.
That's true. Well, let me ask you this. You got CJ at 107, Paul Reed at 110. I know CJ is 3 spots higher, but like, which one of those two guys are you taking first in a vacuum?
No, easily CJ. Like that's goes back to our debate earlier. Like that is there is no other person on that roster that is coming for his 33 minutes. He might struggle there, but there is that's upside, right? Taking him at 100 is upside, because if Ingram is down or if Zion is down, maybe he is the 70th best player or 80th best player. But if, as you said, if people are taking him in the 60s, what's the case for him to be better than that? I see there's no case for him to be better than that. And when I'm picking in round 7, I want someone to at least have is there a way that I can squint and look really hard and go, you can maybe beat this by 30? And I go, well, the way I squint, everything goes backwards there. That is best case. So when I get him at 100, it's all built in and I lose nothing from it. So I love that there, but I'm not taking him at absolute best case. We're assuming these guys are missing 100 games combined. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me.
It's interesting that the teams that take him in that sort of 60 to 70 range, they tend to have like a Steph Curry, KD, Paul George. They're drafting as if it was like a few years ago. That seems to be the case.
There are quite a few people, this is off track with this, and I'll just take the CJ thing off the screen here, that really view, and they draft from fantasy using the numbers from the season before. And they go, well, your players don't change that much, which is true, but it's also not true. Like, you'll see 50 players jump out of the top 150 every season and 50 new guys come in. And there are people who just will bank on that. They go, I need to have seen it happen multiple times for me to believe that it's going to change or be different or whatever. And that they are those sort of people who do that. And they were the people who were like, they heavily invested in guys like, say Tobias Harris last season, not trying to factor in how the James Harden thing was going to fit into that. It's like whatever happened last season, let's just draft based on that. I don't tend to find that's a great strategy.
Well, I'll tell you what, last season rankings are free and available everywhere on the web, whereas like next year's projections aren't. So maybe that's a factor.
That's true. But like there is so many of those things. Like it'd end up with you taking Kelly Olynyk at like 100 or something, which I don't think is going to necessarily work out. And there's always got to be little movement. And people will go, well, we'll base it on last year, but then we'll make our own manual adjustments. Okay, so that is you doing projections. You're trying to project how things are going to change, because as much as we think a lot stays the same, and it sort of does, it doesn't. There's quite a bit of stuff that does change through the NBA, and it might seem marginal, but for fantasy, we're going to see there's always giant things that change across. B-Dub, you've got a lot of stuff to handle there with the World Cup kicking off today, and those drafts are going to be super fun. I've made my pick. I picked at number 3 in my division, and I picked Shea at number 3. What do you think of that?
Love it. Love it. He went 6 in my division, and I was picking 8th. So I ended up getting Tatum. So
that's pretty good. I was debating Shea and Halliburton were both sitting there. And who was the other one that I was going to debate at that spot? Who's the other guy that I can't even think who it is? There's someone else that normally...
Luka?
Oh, yeah, Luka, yeah. I was debating those 3. But you know what? Let's just go with Shea and see how it goes. It's very hard to make an incorrect decision at that spot. B-Dub, tell us what's going on with FBI outside of the World Cup at the moment.
All right. So with the main thing that's going on is our redraft leagues live and filling up. So dropping probably 6 to 8 at a time. Head-to-head 9-cat, Roto 8-cat and 9-cat. And if you want to participate in the leagues, we got ones at about $20, $50, $100. There's a couple of high roller leagues there as well, around the $500 mark. And those leagues are filling up quickly. The drafts for those are going to kick off on the 9th of October, so about a week from today. So anyone that's looking for a really competitive league, a fun community to get involved with, head over to my Twitter handle at Hidden Upside, jump into our Discord server. A lot of feedback that Discord is a little bit difficult to get your head around and that kind of thing. The trick is jump in within it. We're all clever people. Within not too long, you will have your head around it, and you'll get a lot of benefit because we've got our general channels full of great fantasy players dropping their insights, and you've got the leagues, and that's really what we're focusing on at the moment. And the World Cup, as you said, kicked off today. Just the redraft leagues that we're filling up for the balance of the season. And probably the other thing that I'll quickly mention is our YouTube channel and our podcast. So we've started getting those going a lot higher clip. We've got Adam King doing a regular show twice a week into the regular season. We've got Noah Rubin, who's come on board, who's doing a regular show. Matt Lawson is doing a Dynasty show, which is going to get cranking in the next couple of weeks. And we've got a few other things up our sleeves. So, yeah, really fun community to get involved with, and encourage you guys all to come over and check it out.
Go check it out. Great leagues run by B-Dub and the guys over there at FBI B-Dub. Thanks for coming on and having a chat with me.
Thanks, mate. Good to talk to you.
And that'll do it for me today. Don't forget, you follow the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and on the Odyssey app. And I said Stitcher again. I'm never going to learn this. Leave comments, subscribe, ring the bell. Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.